Hey YouTube, this is PrimetimePokemon. In this video, I'll be reviewing my Espeon GX and Garbodor deck. Now this is another competitive TCG deck review that I'm doing for the 2018 Standard Format. In the description of this video, you'll find a link to the playlist I've created for all of these deck review videos. So this video will be laid out the same as all of my other deck review videos. The beginning, I'll talk general strategy with this deck. The middle portion of the video, I'll show the deck checklist. I'll also have the deck checklist in the description of this video. And then a majority of this video, I'll be going through each and every card in this deck, stating why the card is in the deck and how I use that card. So when it comes to general strategy with this deck, and this deck is gaining a lot of popularity lately in the standard format, mainly because both Buzzwole GX and Lucario GX are weak to Psychic type Pokemon. And then once you get Garbodor set up, it turns off all abilities. And Zoroark GX is one of the most popular methods of getting cards into your hand with its trade ability. So this is really more of a defensive type deck, taking advantage of what is most popular out there and defeating those types of decks by taking advantage of their weaknesses. So the way to set up this deck would be the following. You want to try and get Eevee in the active Pokemon spot during your first turn. That way you can attach a Psychic type energy and use Eevee's ability to immediately evolve into Espeon GX. And for only one Psychic energy, Espeon GX can confuse the defending Pokemon. And one thing to note with this deck, every single card in this deck that you're going to want to attack with requires only 2 energy cards. Now it could be a Psychic energy and then a double colorless, but you're going to only have to attach 2 total energy cards to all of these cards. So ideally, Espeon GX is your main attacker. It gets set up very quickly. And both Espeon GX and then Tauros GX have very powerful GX attacks that should be able to knock out at least one Pokemon when being used. So like I mentioned, both Buzzwole GX and then Lucario GX are weak to Psychic type Pokemon. So you can set up Espeon GX right away in the game, and then you can set up Garbodor, the one with the Trashalanche move, on your bench, and then move that into the active Pokemon spot later in games to take advantage of the item cards your opponent has discarded and do major damage for only 1 Psychic energy card. And then I do include both Tauros GX and Drampa GX in this deck to take advantage of the 1 double colorless energy card both need to attack. Drampa GX can discard a special energy from your opponent's active Pokemon, and then the more damage that Tauros GX has on it, the more damage it can do when attacking. So again, the quick strategy here is to get Espeon GX set up and then turn off abilities with the Garbodor that has the Garbotoxin Ability from the bench. That way you can limit the abilities your opponent can use, and if they're using something like Zoroark GX or anything to draw cards, that will really make their deck that much harder to set up. And then of course with Tapu Lele GX, it turns off that ability and your opponent won't be able to get supporters into their hand. So on the screen now you can see the deck checklist. Only 17 Pokemon in this deck. I only used 2 Eevee and 2 Espeon, mainly just 2 of each because you can get to Espeon GX quickly from Eevee. And then I used just 1 of both Drampa and Tauros GX, mainly because those aren't my primary attackers, but they are basic Pokemon that can attack quickly. And if you have damage on your bench Pokemon, Drampa GX can do 150 damage per turn. I do use 3 copies of Tapu Lele GX just to get the cards I need into my hand right away during the game. And then I can turn off abilities, and then Tapu Lele GX really isn't needed because I'll have the cards I want already set up. When it comes to trainer cards, 32 total. I used the standard supporter cards, only 1 copy of Bridget. It's not that important that I get my bench set up right away just because I do not use any stage 2 cards in this deck, a lot of stage 1 and basic Pokemon. And then of course I'm very heavy on the item cards in this deck, specifically Choice Band and Float Stone, just because you can attach a Choice Band to Garbodor from Guardians Rising, do a lot of damage with Trashalanche, and attach that Float Stone to the Garbodor from Breakpoint, and then it will turn off abilities. And you want your opponent to use Field Blower and waste their Field Blowers and still be able to attach those tool cards to your Pokemon. And then I use 11 energy cards in this deck for double colorless energy. A lot of Pokemon in the deck require colorless energy to attack. And then I do have the one special charge just to be able to get those special energy cards back into my deck. So I can take a look at the Pokemon in the deck first. 17 total Pokemon I use in the deck. Started off with the 2-2 line of Eevee and Espeon GX. Eevee is from the Sun and Moon base set. You're going to want to use this Eevee specifically because of its energy evolution. Whenever you attach a basic energy to Eevee, you can go and find its stage 1 evolution that is that energy type. So I can attach one psychic energy to Eevee and go ahead and evolve it, even my very first turn, into Espeon GX. And then Quick Draw, which I never use because I'm hoping to evolve Eevee right away, allows you to draw a card if you get a heads when flipping a coin. 60 HP on the card, which is solid. It is weak to fighting type Pokemon, which is a bit of a disadvantage with the popularity of the fighting type Pokemon that I mentioned in the opening of this video. And then I use 2 copies of Espeon GX. A very high HP on this card of 200. It is weak to Psychic type Pokemon. 3 moves on this card which are all useful. Psybeam, which you can use for only one Psychic Energy card, does 30 damage, plus it confuses the defending Pokemon, so it helps prevent things like Buzzwole or anything that can attack and do a lot of damage quite quickly. Psychic, for 2 energy cards, does 60 damage plus. This attack does 30 more damage times the amount of energy attached to your opponent's active Pokemon. So although it doesn't do much damage if the defending Pokemon isn't set up, it also prevents your opponent from setting up their active Pokemon because the more energy they put on their active Pokemon, the more damage Psychic does. And then Divide GX is this card's GX attack for 2 energy. It allows you to put 10 damage counters on your opponent's Pokemon in any way you like. So I like using this GX attack to knock out a basic Pokemon that I know is important for my opponent's deck. Like I was facing a Vikavolt, Tapu Koko, and then Tapu Bulu GX deck. I went ahead and knocked out Grubbin right away so it could not evolve into Vikavolt, and that really set my opponent back. But again, Buzzwole GX and Lucario GX are weak to Espeon GX, so that makes Psychic even more powerful. Now the reason I only have 2 Espeon GX, other than the fact it's easy to get to, is that if the defending Pokemon isn't set up, or if they only require 1 energy card to attack, Psychic really doesn't do that much damage. Next up would be a 4-4 line of Trubbish and Garbodor. I use 4 of this Trubbish from Breakpoint. The most important thing here is that it has an HP of 70, so it is a little bit harder to knock out. Only 1 move, Acid Spray, that does 10 damage for 1 Psychic Energy, and then it also allows you to discard an energy attached to your opponent's active Pokemon if you get a heads when flipping a coin. I never really want to use this card in the active Pokemon spot. I can easily attach a Float Stone or use Guzma to get it out of the active Pokemon spot. And then I use 2 of each Garbodor. This is from the Breakpoint set. It allows you to turn off abilities with its Garbotoxin ability. So it does have a solid HP, but you really never want to have this card in the active Pokemon spot just because it does require 3 energy cards to attack. So Garbotoxin says, if this Pokemon has a tool card attached to it, each Pokemon in play in each player's hand and in each player's discard pile has no abilities except for this Garbotoxin ability. And then Offensive Bomb for 3 energy cards does 60 damage, and it confuses and poisons the defending Pokemon. But again, I like to have 2 Trubbish on the bench, and then I can evolve 1 into this Garbodor and then 1 into the Garbodor from Guardians Rising that has Trashalanche on it. But again, the whole strategy with this deck is to turn off abilities by putting something like a Float Stone on that Garbodor with Garbotoxin. So Garbodor here, 120 HP, so a little higher HP than the other Garbodor. Guardians Rising set, like I mentioned. Trashalanche is the move to use on this card. For 1 Psychic Energy, it does 20 damage times the number of item cards in your opponent's discard pile. So similar to Psychic on Espeon GX, this may prevent your opponent from wanting to use item cards because the more item cards they use, the more damage Trashalanche does. And then this card's second move, Acid Spray, does 70 damage for 2 energy cards. Flip a coin of heads, discard an energy from your opponent's active Pokemon. So similar to what Trubbish does. Next up would be Drampa GX. This is from the Guardians Rising set. A solid HP. I just used one copy of this card. HP of 180. It has 3 moves on the card. Righteous Edge does 20 damage for 1 colorless energy card. The most important thing here is that it discards a special energy from your opponent's active Pokemon. And again, you could put this card in the active Pokemon spot to start the game. Use Righteous Edge to prevent your opponent from getting their Pokemon set up. And then you can retreat it with a Float Stone, no problem. Berserk is the better move on this card. For 3 colorless energy, or really 2 energy cards, it does 80 damage plus 70 more damage if your bench Pokemon have any damage counters on them. And with so many Float Stone and Guzma in this deck, it's easy to retreat your active Pokemon. And then Big Wheel GX I actually have used in play before. For only 1 colorless energy card, it allows you to shuffle your hand into your deck, then draw 10 cards. So it can quickly get the cards you want into your hand. The only disadvantage is if your opponent uses N the next turn, it will negate the reason that you used Big Wheel GX. But not a bad basic Pokemon. I don't use this card often, but if my opponent is heavy with special energy cards, Righteous Edge wouldn't be bad. This card unfortunately is weak to fighting type Pokemon, which is a bit of a disadvantage, but again, you can get that card out of the active Pokemon spot quite quickly in this deck. And then I used 1 copy of Tauros GX. This is from the Sun and Moon base set. Same thing here, weak to fighting type Pokemon. A solid HP of 180 and 3 moves on this card. Rage is its first move. Every single move requires just 1 double colorless energy. It does 20 damage plus 10 more damage for each damage counter on this Pokemon. So it can do 190 damage for only 1 energy card. Horn Attack does 60 damage. And then Mad Bull GX, its GX attack, does 30 damage times the number of damage counters on this Pokemon. So the more damage on Tauros GX, the more damage it can do when attacking. And this is another card that can dole out a fair amount of damage very quickly. So with this deck, you may end up winning a battle very quickly if your opponent can't get any basic Pokemon on their bench, just because Espeon GX, Tauros GX, and Drampa GX can all do a fair amount of damage just the second turn of your game. And then I have Tapu Lele GX here. I used 3 copies of this card. I use this mainly for its ability Wonder Tag, which allows you to get any supporter card you want from your deck into your hand. Now, of course, I turn off abilities with Garbotoxin in this deck, so you're going to want to use Tapu Lele GX early. And then, of course, I do use 4 double colorless energy, so you can use Energy Drive or even Tapu Cure GX. But Energy Drive for 1 double colorless energy does 20 damage times the amount of energy attached to both active Pokemon. So there's a look at the Pokemon. Again, the strategy is mainly to get Espeon GX set up quickly and then turn off abilities with Garbotoxin on Garbodor from the Breakpoint set. Next up here, I can take a look at the trainer cards. 14 supporters and then 18 item, tool, and stadium cards. I'll take a look at the supporter cards first. I used 4 copies of Guzma. This is from the Burning Shadows set. It is important to be able to manipulate my opponent's active Pokemon, especially with abilities turned off. Guzma becomes even more important. It allows you to switch one of your opponent's bench Pokemon with their active Pokemon. If you do, switch your active Pokemon with one of your bench Pokemon. With so many Guzma and Floatstone tool cards in this deck, you can really rotate whatever you want into your active Pokemon spot and then retreat it for free with Floatstone. Next up would be Supporter N. I use 4 copies of this card. It's from the Fates Collide set. It says each player shuffles his or her hand into his or her deck, then each player draws a card for each of his or her remaining prize cards. The reason I use 4N instead of 4 Cynthia is because I want to manipulate my opponent's hand. If for some reason they are winning a battle and only have 1 or 2 prize cards left, this card will really limit the amount of cards they can get into their hand. Next up would be Cynthia. I do use 3 Cynthia. This is very similar to N. This is from the Ultra Prism set. It says, shuffle your hand into your deck, then draw 6 cards. So you are not discarding any cards when using this card, and you always get 6 cards, where N, it all depends on how many prize cards you have left. And then Professor Sycamore, I just use 2 of. It's never good to discard a full hand, so that's really why I only use 2 of this card. This is from the Breakpoint set. It says, discard your hand and draw 7 cards. But if you desperately need something in your hand, Professor Sycamore is the best card used just because it gives you 7 cards instead of 6. And then I use 1 copy of Bridget. Ideally, the first turn of the game is when you use Bridget. Then you can go and get 3 Pokemon you want on your bench. I always try and get 2 Trubbish and then 1 Eevee on the bench, unless I start with one of those 2 Pokemon in the active Pokemon spot. Then I may go and get something like Drampa or Tauros. This is from the Breakthrough set. It just says, search your deck for 1 basic Pokemon EX or 3 basic Pokemon and put them on your bench. So again, Ultra Ball and then Tapu Lele would be the path to get to Bridget the first turn of your game. I use 18 item, tool, and stadium cards in this deck. Started off with Choice Band, which is from the Guardians Rising set. You attach this to a Pokemon, and it does 30 more damage when you're attacking a Pokemon GX or Pokemon EX. Again, the reason I used 4 of this card is because tool cards are very important in this deck, and it turns off abilities when attached to Garbodor. And then I can attach this to the Garbodor from Guardians Rising and do that much more damage. Floatstone is next. The newest set to include Floatstone would be Breakthrough. You attach this as a tool to your Pokemon, and it has a free retreat cost. So again, I can Guzma whatever Pokemon I want of my opponents into the active Pokemon spot, and put whatever Pokemon I want in my spot, and then I can retreat it for free with Floatstone. And then of course, if you have any Pokemon that have a move that can only be used every other turn, you can reset that move by using Guzma and Floatstone. And then I also use 4 copies of Ultra Ball. A lot of different sets have Ultra Ball in them. It allows you to search your deck for any Pokemon, but you have to discard 2 cards first. Again, I try and use this the first turn of the game to go and get Tapu Lele. And of course, with the Stage 1 cards here, Espeon GX, if you have to go and find that, or Garbodor, this card is useful to get. Next up would be Field Blower. 2 copies of this card. This is from the Guardians Rising set. It allows you to choose up to 2 in any combination of Pokemon tool cards and stadium cards in play and discard them. Now in this deck, because I use 3 Tapu Lele GX, you may want to use Field Blower, remove the Floatstone from Garbodor, put down Tapu Lele, go get whatever supporter you want, then reattach a tool card to Garbodor to turn off abilities again. And then Parallel City is the only stadium card I use in this deck. I use 2 of this card. Now, like I said, this is more of a defensive deck. What I like about this is you're already turning off abilities, so you're limiting something like Zoroark GX, for example, and then it also reduces the number of Pokemon your opponent can have on their bench. This card is also from the Breakthrough set. 2 options on it. The top option limits the number of Pokemon on your opponent's bench to 3, and the bottom option reduces attacks by grass, fire, or water type Pokemon by 20. I always use the bench limiting option in this deck. Now going back to Field Blower as well, I really like this deck against these annoying Hoopa decks that have the ability that says that it prevents all effects from the attack, including damage, done to Hoopa by EX or GX cards. You can turn off abilities with Garbotoxin, and then you can go ahead and knock out that annoying Hoopa with any card in this deck. I really like to face Hoopa decks on the online game just because that is one type of deck I really do not like. As myself, I'm always trying to win the game by getting all 6 prize cards. I really don't like trying to win the game by making my opponent run out of cards in their deck or just not being able to attack at all. Next up here would be Special Charge. I use 1 Special Charge. This is from the Steam Siege set with 4 double colorless energy cards in this deck. It seems like a little bit more with Special Charge. And if you are facing a deck that has Enhanced Hammer and discards some of your double colorless energy, you can get those back with Special Charge. And then the final item card here would be Super Rod. I use 1 copy of Special Charge, 1 copy of Super Rod. it allows you to shuffle 3 in any combination of Pokemon and basic energy cards from your discard pile into your deck. Now, for some reason, if Espeon GX gets knocked out twice, you can go and get that with Super Rod. Same with Garbodor. A lot of times I'll face someone that rotates both of the Garbodors into the active Pokemon spot and knocks them out. Garbotoxin Garbodor, just because it turns off abilities, and then the Trashalanche Garbodor, just because it has the potential to do major damage. So Super Rod, very useful in this deck. So last up here would be the energy cards. I use 11 total energy cards in this deck. Again, a lot of Pokemon in the deck require only 1 or 2 energy cards to attack. So 7 basic Psychic Energy, and I can use Super Rod to get those energy back into my deck. And then I used 4 copies of Double Colorless Energy, and again, this one can be used with Special Charge to really increase the amount of Double Colorless Energy I have in my deck. So there you have it. There's a look at my Espeon GX and Garbodor deck. This deck is really coming on in popularity lately, just because it is a good deck to take down Buzzwole GX and Lucario GX, and it turns off abilities, specifically the Zoroark GX trade ability. But again, you can see the checklist on the screen. Definitely feel free to play with this deck and let me know how it goes. Now, if you have any other deck suggestions for me you'd like to see me build on my channel and review, please let me know. Otherwise, thanks everyone for watching. As always, before you go, check out all the links in the description of this video, including links to my blog, Facebook, and Twitter pages, and stay tuned for more videos. Thank you.